So there's a lot of talk about what the Steelers need to do with their offensive line. We're going to talk a lot about the NFL draft, but there's also things the Steelers can do in free agency. And the center position is still one of major concern for the Steelers this offseason. Whether or not Kendrick Green is their guy is a question. But there's one clear candidate in free agency. That's Ryan Jensen. We're going to talk about him, what we've heard about the Steelers being interested in him in his free agency approaches. We'll talk about the possibilities of them getting him, what it might cost versus what other moves they could make because he will be expensive. That also guys that are piquing our interest more and more the way we look at them after the combine in the NFL draft, offensive line and otherwise, and of course talking about other quarterback situations on the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm your host Chris Carter of the Locked On Steelers podcast. Joining me today will be Wesley Euler of Steeler Nation Radio. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're enjoying this video, hit the like button on the video. Hit the subscribe button to our YouTube channel to get all of our daily content Monday through Friday. We thank you for making the Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day. Also, if you want to help us the show out even further, give us a 5-star review with a positive comment on Apple Podcasts. When you do that, we get you a shout at the end of the show. Join me today, our man with the plan. He's always back with us, Wes Euler of Steeler Nation Radio and the Ears and Beers podcast. Wes, how you doing?
Chris, I'm fantastic. Always a pleasure to chop it up with you. Let's get tropical.
Yeah, let's get tropical. Okay.
I'm still trying out these. I don't know. Eventually, something's gonna stick. Bing bong didn't work. Cuz didn't work. Let's get tropical.
You still say cuz every day. Like, what up, cuz? He hits me with that anytime I pick up the phone. But okay, Wes, let's talk about some Steelers things here. Now, we'll get to Aaron Rodgers. I will get your Aaron Rodgers take later in the show, but I want to talk about Ryan Jensen because Dan Graziano of ESPN was doing free agency rumors and things that he's heard in his notebook, and he published over the weekend talking about the franchise tag situation. And whereas we've now seen the Bengals have franchise tagged Jesse Bates, the Browns have franchised David and Njoku, and I believe there's one other player who's been franchised in the league. Ryan Jensen, of course, couldn't have that happen with the Buccaneers, and he's hitting the free agency market. The Steelers are in the market, reportedly, from Dan Graziano. I think that's a very good thing because Ryan Jensen's a heck of a center. He's a guy who immediately would make the line a lot better. And he's a guy who's he's 30. He's about to be 31 in a little bit here, but he's been playing very well for the past few years. So you think that he's got some years in him. The question though is, should the Steelers go all out for him because he's going to take a good amount of money. If you look at PFF.com, they estimate that he would cost $13 million a year. That's a lot of cap money for a center that you're bringing in free agency, but it is an important position. And the other thing is that it could be higher because along with Dan Graziano's report is the fact that the Ravens, the Bengals, the Jets, and other teams are rumored to be in the market as well. This could be a bidding war. And as much as the Steelers are excited to have money this time around, you don't want to just blow all your money in one store.
No, you do not. And I think that's the important thing here. In theory, would I love to have Ryan Jensen? Absolutely. Super Bowl champion, leader, veteran. That's something you and I have talked about over the last couple weeks since the season ended, into the offseason here. A lot of these position groups, they just need an adult in the room.
Yeah.
All your wide receivers are still on their rookie deals as it stands right now. Your offensive line is insanely young, and it was last year too, obviously, minus Trey Turner. Your running back, Najee Harris, is a young guy who's entering his second league in the year. You need some adults. You need some experience. You need some veterans in that room. But it's the bidding war thing, man. And no bidding war. All right. No war in Ukraine. No bidding war for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I just don't. I don't think that this is going to work out the way that we would all like it to, because he's going to want paid probably as the top center in the league, or at least on par with someone like Corey Linsley, right, who just signed that deal with the Chargers. Except for, here's the thing, Corey Linsley's 4 years younger, and he's still got some tread on those tires before he gets to 30. Ryan is now on the other side of 30. So for all those reasons, I'm hesitant to think it's a legitimate, real possibility. Again, in theory, I love it because you need an adult for that group. You need somebody with some experience. He's very good. You've got some cap space, but I just don't think it's going to be that simple. He's going to want paid because let's be honest with this too, with his age being on the other side of 30, this is probably his last opportunity in his career to cash in. So he's not going to be taking any type of discounts. And again, Super Bowl champion, like he shouldn't. And so it's kind of same church, different pew as the Mitch Trubisky conversation for me.
Mm-hmm.
In theory, if everything was sunshine and rainbows and you could get him for the fair price, yeah, absolutely sign me up. I just don't think that's going to happen because I think you would have to get into a bidding war, and no war, Mr. Carter.
It's the point here is that the Steelers want to make sure that they're not being ridiculous. They're not just spending just frivolously, we're just going to throw this money out the window because we finally have it. They're going to be strategic with it. And if you're going to invest that kind of money in a guy, you want this guy to be a person that's going to be, not in the upper 30s. This is why I keep pounding the JC Jackson table, because he's 26 years old. He will be 26 years old for the rest of the season this year. If you sign him to a 4-year deal, even if it's really expensive, by the end of that deal, he's 30. And that means you could probably negotiate an extension with him by that time if he continues to be that kind of a player. Orlando Brown Jr. was the other guy who got franchise tagged. It just hit me. But you're looking at guys who could be in this role, and it also becomes a question: if you sign Ryan Jensen, does that preclude you from drafting Tyler Linderbaum or Zion Johnson or any of those interior offensive linemen, because especially centers, because that is a major concern this year. You do wonder if Kendrick Green's going to be the guy. Wes, I want to get your thoughts on. There's thoughts out there that Kendrick Green, the Steelers aren't done with him, and I don't think they're done with him.
Let's talk about that.
But like, isn't it realistic to think that, like, if there's a good person out there that's not going to hurt them to go grab, like if Ryan Jensen gives them a call and says, "Hey, I will take it for this deal that fits their budget," or if Linderbaum or Johnson falls into a draftable position where they're like, "Hey, we can take that guy and it doesn't hurt us." Mm-hmm. Don't you still take that shot and not just say, "Oh yeah, but we're just going to rely on Kendrick Green"?
Do I? Yes. But let me, for the sake of this podcast here and for the sake of conversation, let me play devil's advocate for a minute.
Thank you.
You'd be punting after 1 year on a top 100 pick.
True.
Like, it wasn't like Kendrick Green was a 5th round, 6th round. He was a 3rd round pick. He was a top 100 guy. You'd be punting on a 23-year-old who's still going to be 23 until Christmas, by the way, for most of the season, not even a year later. You also, listen, like, I was not thrilled with Kendrick Green, like nobody was. But again, there was no adult in that room. It's very hard to be a rookie center in the NFL, point blank, period. Mm-hmm. The Marquise Pouncey's are so rare. The Creed Humphreys are so rare. It's one of the toughest positions to learn in the NFL, probably 3rd behind quarterback and cornerback as a rookie. It's just a lot to process, and you're in charge of a lot of things. So not only do you have to be on point physically, but you got to be there mentally as well too. And that's a lot to ask, again, particularly when there was no adult in the room. If David DeCastro would have stayed healthy and would have played for the Steelers at a high level last year, don't you think Kendrick Green might have looked a little bit better?
Oh, absolutely. He would have had a captain next to him.
But he's got Trey Turner next to him, who was a new guy in the system. He had 17 different left guards playing next to him throughout the course of the season. I just and there's also this. We talk about a lot of, like, I love Tyler Linderbaum. And we all talk about how Kendrick Green is too small. Kendrick Green's bigger than Tyler Linderbaum is. By a pretty substantial margin. He also, we talk a lot about, he could just move Kendrick Green to guard. He'd be the 2nd smallest guard in the league. Only Shaq Mason would be smaller than Kendrick Green. So if you think Kendrick Green's too small to play center, don't tell me you move him to guard. He'd be the 2nd tiniest one in the league. So again, I'm just playing devil's advocate with all this stuff. I think Kendrick Green had a lot of different things that he was kind of
up against,
rowing, like swimming upstream against last year. I might honestly be more willing to give him 1 more year to let him work on the technical side of things, which we know he's been doing with Pouncey. His size isn't great. It's not prototypical, but it also wasn't the reason that he was getting manhandled at times last year. The reason that he was getting manhandled at times last year was because he had so much on his plate from a communication standpoint,
right?
And because technically he just wasn't there yet. I don't know how you punt on a 23-year-old who was just a top 100 pick. That to me would be really bad asset management. So you know how much I love Tyler Linderbaum. I've tweeted about him all the time, but I think sometimes it's very easy for us to write these guys off after 1 year and not look at the bigger picture. I don't believe in moving Kendrick Green to guard. And so because of that, I'm probably more inclined to give him one more season as opposed to, use another high pedigree draft pick to replace a guy who's only 23 and was just a top 100 selection.
Another thing to remember is when you're looking at that position, you're probably thinking, but how could you pass up on that? Because here's the thing: if you draft, a first round guy in Tyler Linderbaum, even if he falls to you, by the way, there's no guarantee that he falls to the Steelers. But if you draft that guy, you are passing up on maybe the best linebacker. You're passing up on maybe a top corner or really a top anything. And when you look at that and you look at it and say that you could justify by saying, hey, we have a shot at getting the best linebacker or the best corner or maybe an offensive tackle that they didn't think would be their fell. Maybe one of the defensive tackles
right.
they didn't think would be their fell. So like I could totally see the Steelers just saying like, you know what? We have a player there that we're still working on. We'll worry about that. And maybe you get a guard. Maybe because that's another thing there. Zion Johnson or Kenyon Green, if those are your guys, maybe we
could have the law firm of Green and Green on the interior of the offensive line.
That'd be a lot. But I want to talk more about those prospects in a little bit here. But first, we got to talk to you guys about BetOnline.net. Football season's well over, but basketball season's full steam ahead with both pro and college hoops well underway. Conference tournaments are here, baby. And if you want all the latest odds, totals, player performance props, and even where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the #1 spot for all your sports betting needs, as long as you're not Calvin Ridley. BetOnline reigns the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. It's not just basketball either. BetOnline.net is your best source for hockey, boxing, UFC odds, and even came down to the NFL scouting combine. So now you can even get down to free agency and where players land. Go to betonline.net, play those games, and if you head to their website today or your mobile device, you'll learn about all the trends and the action available to you when you visit BetOnline, where the game starts. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Wes Euler of Steeler Nation Radio. Wes, talking about some of these interior offensive linemen in the NFL draft. I look at the prospects available to the Steelers, and there's 3 guys that ring out as the only first round grade dudes. There's Tyler Linderbaum, center from Iowa.
Yes.
Kenyon Green, guard from Texas A&M, and Zion Johnson, guard from Boston College, who might transition to center. And these are all intriguing prospects. These are all guys who, I'm interested in seeing, how do they measure up. I really like Zion Johnson though. And he's a guy, we had a mock draft Monday winner with Dan Jackellis. He picked Zion Johnson. Zion Johnson had the most bench reps during the combine this year.
Yep.
He has good size at 6'3" with the wingspan that he has. He had one of the best broad jumps, one of the best vertical jumps. He looked really good in the Senior Bowl, and that was when he was transitioning to center. I like that pick a lot more. Like before, I was kind of like, if they settle for him, it's cool. But he's looking more and more of a guy that's sitting there. And this is, again, where I was going with, if you don't draft Tyler Linderbaum, it's not the end of the world because maybe you're betting on Kendrick Green. But Zion Johnson could give you the best of both worlds because let's say Kendrick Green does well. Let's say the communication's there this year, and then you don't need a center. Well, Zion Johnson plays guard. And now you have Dotson, Green, and Johnson as your interior offensive line. And those are three dudes. Okay, you can get behind that. But let's say Green does do bad this year. Well, then Zion Johnson knows, hey, that could be my job in a year or two, depending on how that plays out. But like you said, when you look at Tyler Linderbaum, you got those questions about his size. You got this question about what he's going to be able to do. And I do think that there's going to be some people who are like, really, I mean, he was awesome in Iowa, but when he played some of those SEC teams, he didn't look as dominant. Is Zion Johnson has he bumped up in that conversation for you, or how do you still see that group of three guys?
Yeah, if let's put it this way, if all three were there, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think I would lean towards Zion Johnson. I really do, because of that flexibility that you just mentioned. Again, if you take Tyler Linderbaum, you're drafting him to be a center. And that means that you're either punting on Kendrick Green after a year, or you're moving Kendrick Green to guard, where once again, he would be the second smallest guard in the National Football League. Zion Johnson, too, not only does he offer that flexibility, and just a guy that obviously he's being talked about as a first rounder, has a lot of upside, a lot of measurables, a lot of traits. He's a dude with traits, Chris Carter.
Right.
Another thing that I would like potentially is, let's go hypothetical here. You sign a guard in free agency, you draft Zion Johnson, and then all of a sudden you got a little competition. What are you going to do with Zion? What are you going to do with Dotson, right? Because, Dotson is a guy that I think shouldn't feel comfortable. It was very clear last year he was hearing all the praise about him. He was hearing all this potential talk that we were having about him. He wasn't really ready to go for training camp and for the start of the season, and I think that ended up costing him with injuries throughout the year. I think you need a little motivation, a little kick in the butt, a little competition. Okay. If you're Dotson, you bring in a free agent at guard, you bring in Zion Johnson at guard. Not only does that create competition for Dotson, but as you mentioned, it would for Kendrick Green as well, too, because it's like, hey, if it's not working out for you, if you can't get this thing figured out in the first couple weeks, we got another rookie who can play center that we're going to test out. It's that whole, I know you have my colleague Arthur Moats here on the podcast from time to time. Moats talks about this all the time, how Mike Tomlin, other than Ben Roethlisberger for the last 17, 18 years, Mike Tomlin wants competition at every position. He doesn't want guys to feel comfortable. He says to players all the time, if they have bad reps during practice, if they have a bad couple weeks, hey, don't make me go shopping. That's the thing that Moats has said before, that Mike Tomlin, hey, if you don't get this figured out, we'll go shopping, right? As in, we'll bring in somebody to replace you. I think for guys like Kendrick Green, for guys like Kevin Dotson, while obviously you're not giving up on them yet or anything like that, you want them to know that you're willing to go shopping. You want them to feel like they have to earn it every day this offseason. And because of all that, while I'd probably have Linderbaum rated the highest still, I think for the Steelers, I think Zion Johnson would be a heck of a move in that regard, because he gives you flexibility. He creates, I think, multiple tiers of competition and camp battles there as well, too.
And that's one thing. Mike Tomlin loves it when you're versatile. He wants those guys that can play multiple positions,
especially on the offensive line.
Especially on the offensive line, because we all seen how injuries can derail things. I mean, Kevin Dotson, suffer his injuries. All in all, didn't cripple the line because they were still struggling, but it caused other problems that they had to deal with, and that wasn't something that they were that they were keen on. So I'm with you there. That there's some questions as far as, maybe that versatility is something that Mike Tomlin's considering. So Zion Johnson, that's why I keep bringing him up, because it starts to make more and more sense. You look, he's nasty, he's physical. Also, I want to point out, yes, Tyler Linderbaum is officially also listed at 6'3", but also he's 290. He's 290. Like, that's the thing. Like,
and Kendrick Green's 315.
Right. Like, and that's the thing, is that, like,
25-pound difference. Right.
So, like, Linderbaum's gonna have to put on weight, and it's not. I know some people are like, well, just put on weight. That ain't always just easy to do, especially when you've been playing for so long, like Linderbaum has. And even when you do put it on, there's no guarantee that you're gonna just do that and then still play at your level.
Continue to move like you used to. Yeah.
There's plenty of guys that have tried that and it didn't work. Stephon Tuitt was the guy, like, he did it and it took him a while to adjust to it. And I think he even had to adjust back a bit at one point because it was too much. So again, we're talking about guys who are thicker, Zion Johnson is of that category.
Yes.
As is Kenyon Green. The one reason I'm not bringing up Kenyon Green too much is that he did not look good in his on-field drills. He did not test well at the combine. He looked a little bit sloppier. He'd be a guy that, if all three of those are there, he'd be the last one that I would choose off the bunch.
Agreed. And he's maybe, if he ends up slipping down boards and pick 52 rolls around and you didn't go O-line at pick 20, maybe that's a possibility there. But yeah, I'm with you. 20 feels a little too rich for my taste as it relates to the other KG.
Right. And then the other thing is you want to make sure that the offensive line pick that you're fully confident that guy is going to be that guy.
If you're taking an offensive lineman at pick 20, he better be Pouncey. He better be DeCastro. He better be ready to come in and have an impact year one.
Right. Exactly. And that's what we're thinking these other guys could be. But there's other positions that have to be considered here, and quarterback is still one of them. I want to talk about that with Wes in just a second here. But first, we got to talk to you guys about rockauto.com. Save time and money when visiting rockauto.com. Why choose to spend 30%, 50%, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? For example, a Honda Odyssey fuel pump can cost $353 from a chain store, but they'll only cost $216 from Rock Auto. Rock Auto is a family-owned business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Rock Auto's prices are reliably low for every customer. They have everything you could need, from brake parts to tail lamps to motor oil to even new carpet. And if you go and explore their easy-to-use website today, you can find the solution to your auto part needs. Just go to rockauto.com right now, and you'll see all the parts available for your car or truck. But when you do that, be sure to write Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box so that they know we sent you? Amazing selection, reliable low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com today. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Wes Euler. Wes, I got to ask you, man. I talked a lot about this yesterday with when we were talking about Aaron Rodgers. It was a fun conversation, I'll say that much. But I wanted to talk to you about this because I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but there's all the hoopla from Steelers fans about picking Aaron Rodgers, about about him being the guy, and if he can make you a contender right away.
What if he demands a trade to Pittsburgh?
Right, like all that hype. And Jeff Hartman was my guy that I had on with me from behind the steel curtain. We both agreed it's not the move, especially with trade. And now we also know the Steelers would be competing with multiple teams in this. Even if they are in this actual competition, because there's been refuted stories that they're not. But even if they are, reportedly, the Broncos are willing to give up their first round pick this year, which is 9th overall, their first round pick next year, a conditional first round pick the year after, and a 3rd round pick. And that's a lot to compete with. And if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers and you're saying, hey, we're coming to the table, if I'm the Packers, I'm like, I need definitely 3 first-round picks from you, because one of those picks ain't going to be in the top 10. And then we're not expecting you to go into the top 10 with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. So you're talking about 3 years of first-round picks for a guy who might play for you for 1 or 2 years. And I just that's where I'm just at. I just don't think that's worth it.
No, I agree. Listen, like, everyone is screaming at each other and just losing the plot with this Aaron Rodgers debate. You're an idiot. No, you're an idiot. No, you're an idiot. Back-to-back MVP, Mason Rudolph, draft capital, salary space. Like, folks, it's like, do we really have to do this? Does Aaron Rodgers make the Pittsburgh Steelers better? Yes, absolutely, 100%, without a doubt. He is one of the best 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the league. That's why he's been the MVP the last 2 seasons. Does Aaron Rodgers make the Steelers the possibility to win the division and win some playoff games? Yeah, certainly. But again, at his age, at the cost, and in the scope of where this organization is, I don't think it would be smart business. I really don't. Look at the Green Bay Packers. They played in one of the worst divisions in football. They had home field advantage the whole way. They had a better run game than the Steelers. They had a better passing attack than the Steelers, better offensive line than the Steelers, and a better defense than the Steelers. And they still lost at home to Jimmy G and to the Niners for the second time in 3 – well, I guess 3 years ago it was in San Francisco, but NFC Championship game, you get it. If Aaron Rodgers, who I've always been a bit – like, Aaron Rodgers, honestly, is – maybe my favorite quarterback to ever watch play. It's him or Peyton Manning. Like, I love watching the dude play. I've been yelled at, that I've been doing shows on SNR for 4 or 5 seasons now. I've had Steelers fans tweet, like, the weeks that the Steelers have played the Packers and I gush about Aaron Rodgers. I've had Steelers fans tweet me and be like, oh, what's the matter with you? Screw Aaron Rodgers. He beat us in the Super Bowl. He's a choke artist. He's only been to 1 Super Bowl. And now all of a sudden we want to sell the farm for that guy at age 39?
Right.
Like, I just don't get that. That doesn't make sense to me. You want to bring him to, I mean, let's be honest, what's more than likely going to be a worse situation. Like, just you don't have to, you could take off your black and gold glasses and admit that they had a better offensive line, better run game, better weapons, better defense in a worse division.
Yep.
Aaron Rodgers didn't have to worry about Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson.
No,
Aaron Rodgers didn't have to worry about Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert and Josh Allen.
Myles Garrett coming after.
Yet he still can't get back to another Super Bowl. And again, I say this as somebody who, my entire life, I've been called an Aaron Rodgers apologist.
Mm-hmm.
It just, to me, it doesn't make sense. If you look at it and you're saying you've got Cam Hayward, you've got TJ, you've got Minka, Tuitt's coming back. You've got this you've got a young offense with some promising guys like Deontay and Najee and Pat Freiermuth. You've got all this cap space. We can't afford to waste years of Cam Hayward and TJ Watt and Minka Fitzpatrick. You know what would be wasting years of those three? Not fixing the run defense.
Right.
Because if your run defense is ranked 32nd in the NFL, I don't care if you've got Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, and John Elway all dipped into one. It's not going to matter.
Right.
This team, to me, just, does Aaron Rodgers make them better? Absolutely. Does, in theory, would Aaron Rodgers make them a contender? And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see me. I'm doing the air quotes thing. A contender? Yes, in theory, absolutely. But in reality, I still don't think it's enough to get it done with his age at 39. And let's be honest, too, all these same people that are screaming to bring in Aaron Rodgers are the same ones that have been trashing Matt Canada and saying you can't win with him as an offensive coordinator either. So again, I just feel like we've all lost the plot on this. I get it. We haven't had to worry about our QB1 in Pittsburgh for 2 decades.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not a reason to panic. That's not a reason to sell the farm when it still feels like you're not that close. When do you sell the farm? When you're the Rams and you're clearly a quarterback away. When do you sell the farm? When you're the Bengals right now and it's very obvious that you need help on the defense or the offensive line and you need a cornerback or two. Like if I'm the Bengals and I'm going to overpay for J.C. Jackson, okay.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm the Bengals and I'm going to overpay for Ryan Jensen, okay. I don't think it's smart business to pretend like the Steelers are there. Does he in theory make them a contender? Again, air quotes. Yes. The one or two of the best quarterbacks in the league will do that in theory, but you've got to have the complete roster. You can do the Niners thing and get close. You can do the Bengals thing and get close, but eventually you're going to lose to a more complete team if you've got that many glaring weaknesses that the Steelers still have.
Exactly, and that's my point there. So that I'm still there with
Aaron. Rambled there a long time. I'm sorry.
You did. I'm happy. I'll take your rambling here. That's why we want you here, baby. We got that fire, that passion. Now, on the flip side of that, so we've talked enough about Aaron Rodgers. I will not bore with you guys that. I promised that we would talk about a mock draft in this because in the NFL, we have the Locked On NFL Draft podcast, which is a great show. A guy, Ryan, he hosts Locked On Chiefs, and then Crockett, he's a former NFL player who hosts Locked On Niners. They team up to talk NFL draft every single day. So if you want your NFL draft fix every day, that's where you go and you go get it. But they release a weekly mock draft where they pick every single first round player for every single team, and they send it out to us to let us know like who they picked. Now, this was an interesting selection here. Now, I'll go through it. Basically, they had the Jaguars starting off with taking Aiden Hutchinson, Kayvon Thibodeau to the Lions, Ahmad Gardner going 3rd overall to the Houston Texans. That was a surprise to me. I was like, whoa. Jermaine Johnson, edge rusher, going to the Jets at 4. Evan Neal going to the Giants at 5. Ikem Ekwonu going to the Panthers at 6. Giants get David Ohabo, the edge rusher from Michigan. Falcons at 8 get Charles Cross. So right there, 3 offensive tackles off the board by pick 8.
And that's very realistic.
And that's very realistic. But also, like I said, there's also 3 edge rushers off the board. So really, you've only lost 1 cornerback. 4 edge rushers off the board by then. So you've got a cornerback and 3 offensive tackles and 4 edge rushers. That's insane. And then the Broncos get Jordan Davis at 9, which I thought was an interesting move. Trevor Penning being the next offensive tackle off the board at 10 to the Jets.
That's a little high for me, but hey, everyone needs tackles.
Little high for me as well. But I get it. They're trying to protect Zachary Wilson and they want to get things going there. So I totally get that. Washington gets Garrett Wilson at 11. The Vikings get Derek Stingley at 12. Chris Olave goes to the Browns at 13. Ravens get George Karlaftis, edge rusher from Purdue. The Eagles get Trayvon Walker, edge from Georgia, and corner from Washington, Trent McDuffie, because remember they got back-to-back picks there.
Oh, yeah.
By the way, I think that's now 6 edge rushers before the Steelers even pick.
Which that's what you're rooting for.
That's what you're rooting for. Get those edge dudes.
Because the Steelers ain't taking one at 20.
This is working out very well for the Steelers. So then the Chargers, Jamison Williams receiver from Alabama at 17. Saints, that's where Kenny Pickett goes. And this is why I don't think that he'll last to the Steelers. The Saints get Kenny Pickett at 18. The Eagles come back with their 3rd pick. They get Kyle Hamilton, safety from Notre Dame, with the 19th overall pick.
Ooh,
so
that'd be a great nab for them at 19.
Oh, that'd be a great nab for them. I mean, and Kyle Hamilton
might be the best player in this draft.
That's the thing. A lot of people said Kyle Hamilton could be like the first overall pick if the right team wanted him. It's just that safety isn't always the first pillar position that you draft for. But the Eagles are in a position where they could get a safety and they could rock. Like I actually think that would be an interesting pick for them. Now, going over available players for the Steelers here at 20 before I announce who they actually picked. Jahan Dotson's available. Zion Johnson's available. Malik Willis is available. Andrew Booth Jr. is available. It's very intriguing to me. If he falls down this far, do you take that shot? Christian Watson's available. Traylon Burks is available. Kenyon Green's available. So is Nakobe Dean, Devin Lloyd, Tyler Linderbaum, and Matt Corral. So of all those picks, Steeler Nation, Croc from they are Locked On NFL Draft
Ready?
podcast.
Wait, hold on. Ready?
Up.
Doom, 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 doom.
I hate you. With the 20th overall pick of the NFL Draft, the Locked On NFL Draft selects the Pittsburgh Steelers to take Malik Willis, the quarterback out of Liberty.
Yeah! That would have been my answer there, too.
Yeah, we're still like Malik Willis going to the Steelers at 20. Now, it's funny, Wes. I kid you not. There are people in our YouTube comment section who call us idiots for saying for hyping up Malik Willis. They're like, he can't read a defense. He's too stupid to play football. And I'm just like, you're telling on yourself there a bit. Now, Wes,
you're also, let's be honest too. Even if you do this for a living like Chris and I do, it's your best guess.
It's
all right.
Guess.
None of you are the Peyton Manning passing academy out there, all right? Neither are Chris and I.
Yeah, we're not, and we don't pretend to be either. That's the thing. We're just telling you our perspectives.
Don't be ridiculous. And also, I do love the people that, small school guy, da-da-da. Like, you do realize he went to Auburn out of high school, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like he was some jabroni. Like, he was a highly touted high school recruit, went to Auburn, wasn't getting playing time, so he transferred. But, like, he went to an SEC school to play quarterback. He didn't go to FCS, Middle Montana State, Idaho University. Like, come on.
You just do a bunch of names and words in there.
Come on.
But point being, Malik Willis, and look, Malik Willis does have concerns. And when I look at his tape,
yeah, absolutely.
He has the highest ceiling of all the quarterbacks. He has the lowest floor, and his accuracy needs to be worked on. Arthur Moats talked about this last Monday on the show when he was saying, he's on board the Malik hype train.
That's right.
That was a great. That's a great hype train name, by the way. But he's on that because he's like, look, we got Mike Sullivan, the quarterback coach, who's worked with Ben Roethlisberger, Eli Manning, a lot of different quarterback coaches over the years, or a lot of great quarterbacks over the years. So this is a guy who could say, hey, let's get your footwork sharpened up. Let's get your throwing motion sharpened up. Let's make you this threat. And one thing that I see on tape, Wes, when I watch Malik Willis, is that there's plenty of times where if his second and first read weren't there, he was gone. He was like, let's take off.
Right.
But
right.
From what I've heard, when he was brought into team meetings and a lot of teams interviewed him, a lot of people were very much impressed with how well he was drawing out plays and how things react to different defenses. And as I think we talked about this with you last week, everybody was extremely impressed with how he carried himself in all the media performances, and that he was in a very impressive interview.
Yeah, and we heard too in Indy that these guys, it's like speed dating. I mean, they're sitting down with teams 15, 20 minutes. They're getting asked a million questions. We were told that he was not one of those. Like, a lot of times these guys, they'll just regurgitate, right? They'll just repeat. They've got their canned answers ready, and it doesn't really matter what question you ask. They're going to give a pretty similar, non-descriptive answer. And that he was the opposite of that. That he was engaged, like you said, that he impressed teams with some of the schematics discussions that they had. Listen, no quarterback in this draft class is Andrew Luck coming out. I mean, that's not fair. Andrew Luck was probably the most touted quarterback prospect, in the last 15 years to come out of the draft. But you get what I'm saying there.
Yeah.
No one's Joe Burrow. No one's Trevor Lawrence. All these guys, they have their traits. They have their concerns. But that would also be why you could get him at pick 20. I mean, let's be real, right? You normally aren't going to be able to nab a franchise quarterback at pick 20 in the scope of, like last year, for example, there were 5 quarterbacks taken in the top 15.
Yep.
So maybe you should look at it that way in terms of optimism, that this isn't the highest touted quarterback class, but you'd still have the potential to get the guy that could be the guy for the next 15 years at pick 20. And if so, then all of a sudden, hey, buddy, that retool, that reboot, that next chapter of Steelers football just got a heck of a kickstart. If Malik Willis is there at pick 20, I would have a really hard time passing up on him. I would, because, hey, sometimes you got to live dangerously, right? Fortune favors the bold. How many freaking cliches can I throw out in this 30-40-minute podcast?
You've run through a lot of them, Wes. I have to say, like you're really pushing the limit there. But point being, Malik Willis isn't out of the frame of possibilities there for the Steelers. I think it's interesting. A lot of people are throwing quarterback to the Steelers if they fall that far. I'm also not 100% sure that he does fall that far, because there's teams out there that need quarterbacks. Maybe the Broncos trade to get Aaron Rodgers and that works out. But if they don't, if he's not on their roster, they're going to need a quarterback. And if they need a quarterback, that means the Saints are still going to need a quarterback. You still got Washington who needs one. You put them in the mix. I wouldn't put the Panthers past it. Nope. With their considerations.
And also too, just when like you mentioned, with the 3 Eagles picks right in front of the Steelers. Maybe the Eagles don't want to take 3. Maybe they're looking at it and they're saying, all right, let's draft 2 guys and let's trade one of these first-round picks, and then next year we'll have 2 first-round picks again. That could be because a team like say Aaron Rodgers stays in Green Bay in this hypothetical, okay, which I still think is the most likely outcome here. Broncos or Carolina, one of those teams takes a quarterback, okay? And then maybe the Commanders, the football team, the whatever the hell they decide to call themselves in April, they take a quarterback at pick 11. Then it gets to be pick 17 or 19. The Saints are still there. Someone could dance with the Eagles. It's less than a coin flip, I think, that Malik Willis is still there at 20, but it's certainly not impossible.
It's certainly not impossible. And that's the thing there. And also, like you said, with trading back, the Detroit Lions, remember, they have the Rams first round pick because of the Stafford trade. They could sit there and say, you know what, we're going to trade up to take one of those Eagles picks, and we'll get our quarterback.
Say Carolina picks 6th, 7th,
6th.
Say Carolina takes an offensive tackle, okay? Yes. But then pick 19 rolls around and Malik Willis is still there and the Eagles are on the clock and Carolina picks up the phone and says, yo, Philly, what do you want for this pick?
Exactly.
Like, they've got the capital to work with to do that too. They're in a, you could say, position of desperation with a coach who needs to prove it in his last year. So again, it's not likely, it's not probable, but it's possible. South Park.
I picked up what you were putting down.
But that's what makes this all fun. And it just, again, don't do this guy sucks, this guy's terrible, this guy can't play. We're all just best guessing here. All right, go back and look at the 2013 NFL draft in the first round and see how many of those picks were misses. And that's coming from people that do this for a living. It's tough, but you got to take some risks from time to time. And I think Malik would be worth it at pick 20 for that high ceiling that you mentioned.
It's certainly going to be a major point of conversation. If he is picked, it will be the talk. It'll be all the talk of the town going into it. Mason Rudolph will be feeling that pressure. I'm really interested to see how the Steelers handle that. And having a real quarterback battle in Pittsburgh at that point.
It'd be a lot of fun in training camp, wouldn't it?
It's going to be a ton of fun. And then also then you wonder, like, who do they sign in free agency if they bring in Mitch Trubisky or Marcus Mariota or whatever random journeyman's name, then you're throwing them into that mix. And then it's like, wow, like this could get really fun in training camp this year. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. But again, we'll see how this plays out. It's very well could be that they go for this guy. They could say, hey, you know what, Andrew Booth Jr., that's a guy a lot of people have said is a top 10 pick, and he's one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. Maybe they go for him. Maybe they say, forget about this. We're gonna go get him and change how we look at the cornerback position. Overall. So lots of things to consider there, but ultimately still way too much on the table for the Steelers to just commit to one position overall. Still fun. It's always gonna be fun to talk about. Wes, thank you for joining us to have fun on that topic. Let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Yes, sir. On Twitter at Wesley Euler, always posting the happenings there. You guys know I work for Steelers Nation Radio. Arthur Moats and I host the Steelers Blitz. I've said the time here on the show before, Chris. All right,
Mhm.
yeah, we're on at noon. But yeah, really, if you want to help us out, subscribe to the podcast. I mean,
Yes, do that.
that's this future wave, right? Like, honestly, straight up, our bosses have told us we really don't care about the live listener numbers anymore. It's all about the podcast downloads.
Mhm.
So if you want more of me and Arthur Moats, Steelers Blitz, wherever you get your podcasts. I also host the Ears and Beers podcast with our buddy Adam Crowley for you fellow tortured WVU souls. And Chris, little teaser for you, all right, for next week. I got a new project in the works with the Steelers and Steelers Nation Radio.
Ooh.
Got pretty much finalized today. Should be launched by the next time we do this.
Let's go.
So, little teaser. I'll give you the official details next week when it's all live and official and launched. But I'm up to something.
I like this. Let's go, Wes. Get your game on, brother. I like it a lot. Well, that's Wesley Euler. Y'all do follow him and do listen to their stuff. They do a great job. Dale Lally, Matt Williams.
Chris is on every Monday with us.
And they have me on all the time. Arthur Moats, Steelers Nation Radio does great work. I listen to them and bounce ideas off my head for this very show. So do check them out. They do a great job. I'm Chris Carter, host of the Locked On Steelers podcast. You can find this show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. Like this video if you see it on YouTube. Subscribe to your YouTube channel as well as all those platforms. If you want to help us out even further, give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Make sure you attach a positive comment with it. You do both at the same time. You get a special shout out at the end of the show. Thanks again for West coming on. Thanks for you for listening and watching us. We'll have Tony Serino on tomorrow with more on your Pittsburgh Steelers.